85% of teens experience acne at some point, and up to 20% develop facial scarring. Skincare routines prey on this vulnerability, and kids ages 7 to 18 are using up to 6 face products a day, some using 12 or more, most of them causing even more skin damage. Yet, even as emerging research reveals the powerful connection between our gut microbiome and our skin health, Western medicine still focuses on a symptom based approach. But today, the clear skin nutritionist Delaney Doney shares her inside out approach to get to the root cause of acne without the use of skin products or medication.
When you are using that many different products on your skin every day, you are just making it so hard for your barrier to function optimally.
I'm Norma Flood, and I'm an integrative and functional nutritionist. Welcome to Go With Your Gut. When I started the gut to support better gastrointestinal health and mental health, I noticed that improvements in skin are a nice side effect. And that's why I'm excited about my discussion today with Delaney Doney, where we're going to go deeper into the things that we can do to support our microbiome to improve skin health. Welcome, Delaney. Great to have you here today.
So happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I can't wait to have this discussion because I want to share with listeners why you're the perfect person for this discussion. Delaney is a functional nutritionist specializing in one thing, helping teens and adults finally clear stubborn acne for good. Rather than masking symptoms, she digs into the root causes driving breakouts from within the body, uncovering the hidden triggers and imbalances that conventional approaches routinely miss. Delaney holds a master's degree in functional medicine and nutrition from the University of Western States, with advanced training in root cause dermatology and a commitment to the most current cutting edge diagnostic testing available. Her approach is deeply personal. After navigating her own health struggles, including painful cystic acne, she found healing from the inside out and has dedicated her practice to helping both teens and adults do the same. Before we dive in, with that said, I would really love to hear from you, Delaney, your personal experience on this journey. Like, what happened with you that led you to want to get to these root issues that were underlying acne?
Yes, such a good question because my health journey has been quite layered, and acne was not the only symptom that I was dealing with. So, rewinding a bit, about 8 years ago, I moved into an apartment that ended up being infested with toxic mold. And at the time, I was also working a pretty stressful corporate job. I definitely also identify with being a bit of a type A perfectionist. And looking back, I can see with a lot of clarity what was going down. It was kind of a perfect storm of this mold exposure and these other stressors that took my whole system down and triggered a bunch of different symptoms. So acne was not the only symptom. I was also dealing with a lot of digestive issues, anxiety, insomnia, brain fog, fatigue. And so acne was just one piece of a more complex health puzzle. And I then started healing from these various health issues over the course of several years.
Mhm.
And that is when I first sort of clocked functional medicine and taking a root cause approach to healing. And that really, really resonated with me, not band-aiding symptoms, really figuring out what the underlying root cause drivers of symptoms are and addressing those. And so that's really what ignited a passion for functional medicine and nutrition. And like you said, I went back to school, I got a master's degree. And in my late 20s, the acne specifically got really bad
Mm.
while I was still sort of healing from these issues. And At that point, I had functional medicine training on board, so I wanted to approach it differently. With that said, I did still go to a dermatologist just to see what they would say.
Of course.
That's what you're sort of told to do. And unsurprisingly, when I went to the derm, they recommended, a lot of the classic conventional things. So birth control was brought up. I definitely wasn't going to go on that again. Spironolactone. And they also brought up some harsh, topical treatments as well. So a lot of the standard conventional stuff. And I declined all of those things. At that point, I had too much functional medicine training on board at that point, and I had healed other chronic symptoms using a root cause approach. So I was like, "No, I'm gonna heal my acne with a root cause approach." And so that is when, that light bulb went off, and I then ultimately decided to sort of figure out this acne puzzle specifically and address that with a root cause approach. And what was so rewarding about healing the acne specifically in this way was that, acne is very tangible. It's on your skin, it's how you present to the world.
Right.
My acne and my skin barrier start to heal as I started addressing these deeper root cause issues that were driving the acne. And so that whole experience, specifically the acne healing journey, really ignited a passion for that as a specialty and as a niche.
Right. So if I could rewind earlier in your story, that mold infestation.
Yeah.
First of all, it's more common than people think. Even recently, within the past couple months, I had a client that was renting, thankfully, not a owner of a home, and having all these symptoms. She's always had rosacea, and it's like, "Well, why is my rosacea getting so bad?" And now I'm having all this fatigue and all these other symptoms. The first thing, like, looking at your environment, looking at your food, but also your environment. And it's true that when we seek help, especially with our skin, we feel that dermatologists, we hope by now would know about the microbiome, right? Because a lot of research came out in the early 2000s. Even me as a dietitian, I studied late 90s. We didn't know much about the microbiome, and I had to re educate myself on my own. And so in the School of Medicine, I know microbiome is coming in more, but it is shocking, isn't it? Just to hear that they're really not bringing the gut into skincare enough. In fact, I saw an article by a dermatologist at a very reputable university, very recent article, talking about their excitement about cutting edge research that they were looking at the microbiome of the skin as part of treatment. It's like the skin, how about the gut?
Yeah.
So I just had to unpack that just a little bit. And another question I had for you in that first stage,
Yeah.
when you were having all these chronic health problems, was it many years before you studied functional medicine? Did you try a lot of other treatments, or did you fortunately learn quickly to take that path?
I'd say I fortunately learned pretty quickly to get on that path. So I am lucky in that sense because obviously with any kind of health issue, I think it's so common to, take the Western approach for a while before you sort of start realizing there's another way.
Mhm.
And that's really now also the journey that my clients are on too. The clients that I work with, a lot of the people that find me are people who have exhausted a lot of the conventional treatment options already. They've had acne for years. Some of them have even tried multiple rounds of Accutane, as well as all the other things that I named before, Spiro, birth control, everything on the skincare front. And then they eventually realize, oh, wait, there is another way to address this. And it's kind of eye opening. And I think a lot of times, and I felt the same way, like, you feel kind of failed by that other system and you feel a little bit like, okay, I'm done band-aiding this issue. Because yes, there's a time and a place for things like Accutane, sure, but all of those sort of conventional treatment options ultimately act the same way mechanistically. It's all sort of a symptom suppression pathway, right? And so you might get temporary improvement while you're taking that drug, But a lot of people, once they come off of it, have rebound acne, and sometimes that rebound acne is worse than the acne they had to begin with.
Right.
It's pretty eye-opening when people realize that there is a different way to approach acne and all kinds of health issues, and that is with, a more functional root cause lens.
Right. And so it sounds like you're in the same boat I am in, where we tend to be that last option. Like they've exhausted all of those options, especially in Western medicine, and they're still not finding the results that they're looking for, or things become worse often, that they finally find functional medicine as, a better answer to get to that root cause. So, like you said, that is what most of your clients are presenting when they find you, that they've tried a lot of treatments and you know what? I need help. So, would you say most of your clients are teens versus adults?
It's actually really a mix of both. I see
Mhm.
a lot of adults as well, and what I'm really seeing now too is that acne is getting really common in, our late 20s and 30s, and a lot of women specifically are really frustrated, right? Because you feel like when you're in your late 20s and 30s, like, why am I still dealing with acne? Like, I feel like I'm a teenager still. Why am I still dealing with this? And so I do see a lot of adult acne as well, and I think that there's a lot of reasons for that. I think that, you know, acne is very much multifactorial, and I think our society sort of pushes a dysregulated lifestyle on us. We're sort of taught to like hustle, go, 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 don't slow down. So, what I see, especially in a lot of the women that I work with, especially women who are working and have kids, it's really easy to sort of forget the basics, not eat regularly enough. It's really common for a lot of people to be in sort of this low grade fight or flight state all the time, which is also going to have a really profound effect on our gut and on our hormones and on our motility and thus on our skin. So it's definitely a mix of adults and teens.
Right, and especially in a culture where over half of what most teens and adults eat is ultra processed food.
Yeah.
So you're getting less plant food and fiber for the microbiome, you're getting more sugar, you're getting more chemicals. So that can be an issue as well.
Absolutely. In fact, you just had, you know, triggered a light bulb moment for me. That's so true, and research has actually shown that there are certain hunter-gatherer populations that have no incidences of acne, and I just think that that speaks volumes, right? Because these hunter-gatherer populations are eating a whole foods anti-inflammatory diet. They are not sitting inside all day. They're getting natural sunlight. They're moving their bodies. They live a completely different lifestyle than we live in Western society. Unfortunately, I think Western society, it's kind of inherently dysregulating. We're eating, like you said, ultra processed foods. Most of us are chronically stressed out. We're spending too much time inside in fluorescent lighting.
Add screen time. I just did an episode on that about anxiety and depression increasing with screen time.
Yeah.
And then that affecting sleep as well, which sleep affects our gut. So, yeah, it's this perfect storm. In fact, it's like a tornado with everything coming at our gut.
100%. That's so well said.
So, speaking of the influence of social media, I'm sure that you get a lot of clients that learn a lot of their skincare routines on social media. And, the products that they're buying are flying off of the shelves. So, what have you witnessed in your practice?
Yeah, that's such a great question. It's so funny because I think social media, it's sort of a double-edged sword. Like, of course, on the one hand, it's nice because there's so much education and information that is now accessible to us. But on the other hand, it can be really overwhelming to sort through. And I definitely see a lot of clients who have just sort of gone on that whole trial and error cycle for a really long time because they see things on social media that worked for someone. This skincare product cleared my acne. You should try it. So they try that product and it just goes on and on. They try supplements. It's all experimentation and you're just kind of throwing things at the dartboard but without a clear understanding of what you specifically need for your own sort of unique root cause picture. So a lot of those clients are pretty exhausted because they've tried so many things, they've followed so many different trends, and maybe that they help temporarily, but nothing ever really moved the needle. And I think where I see a particularly large sort of damaging impact with social media is specifically with skincare routines. I think nowadays it's very common for people to be on these really sort of overly complex skincare routines with 10 different products. And when you are using that many different products and ingredients on your skin every day, you are just making it so hard for your barrier to function optimally.
Mm,
You're disrupting your skin pH constantly. And when you have a disrupted barrier, that is going to lead to more acne in the long run, as well as dryness and sensitivity and inflammation. So, specifically, I think with skincare products, it can be really hard for people to decipher on social media what they should be using. And once you're on that long list of skincare products, it's hard for the barrier to keep up.
right, right. And then also it's like if you wanna look at your gut being on fire, and there's logs on the fire, and then you're treating the surface by just throwing sand and water at this fire by treating the skin, but there's still this fire happening within the gut that you're not addressing. Again, it's that outward approach that's not getting to the root cause, and as you're saying, it's often making it worse.
Exactly.
So, if a client comes in to see you, are there tests that you often have them do before they see you? Like, is there information that's very helpful, especially gut health, anything else that helps you help your client?
Absolutely, yes. So I actually require that all of my acne clients run a GI map once they get fully onboarded as a new client to work with me. And that is a really strategic and intentional choice on my part.
Oh, I'm going to interject. That's a stool test. So everyone knows the GI map is a stool test.
Yes, thank you.
I know. It's like second nature to us, right? Yeah, the GI map.
No, absolutely. It's a stool test and it gives me really comprehensive insight into the gut microbiome. And I very intentionally start by looking at the gut first before I even look at hormones, for example, which is often a question I get of, oh, well, will we look at my hormones at one point as well? And yes, sometimes I will take a deeper dive and look at hormones later on, but I always want to look at the gut first. And there's really good reason for that. I mean, if you even just high level think about hormones are processed and excreted and metabolized through the gut. So if your gut is super imbalanced, if you have infections, and if you're not digesting food properly, if you have leaky gut, that is going to have a downstream effect on your hormones. So let's look at the gut first. And that's going to shed light on a lot of different things. So, gut inflammation, digestive capacity, potential dysbiosis, if you're struggling with certain pathogens like candida or H. pylori or parasites, leaky gut, and all of these things are primary root cause drivers of acne.
Right.
So I always want to look at the gut first.
Right, and so they'll at least have that test done, and I would probably imagine that 100% of your clients have some level of dysbiosis, correct?
Yes. So pretty much every single time I am finding something significant on that GI map. What's interesting though is that, you can have two clients who present with the same type of acne. Let's say it's chin and jawline acne, and it might look the same, but those two people can have different root cause pictures. In the context of the GI map, I might have one client who has a ton of pathogenic overgrowth and H. pylori and candida, and in another client, it might be actually a deficiency dysbiosis picture where over time, all of their commensals have been completely wiped out. So they have no good bacteria and they have really severe leaky gut. And so the two approaches for those two different clients are going to be completely different and totally individualized, which is why it's so important to bring in strategic functional testing.
And that goes the same for symptoms. I know that in our family, for example, My son, his gut issues are more related to mental health or his eczema. Whereas with my daughter, if her gut's out of balance, it shows up, especially as rosacea, So everyone is unique, and that is what can make it confusing for most people. But I think if we understand, I often use the tree of life as a platform. Like if our roots are these inputs and we have depleting and supportive inputs, and then it's going through our trunk or our body, which is our unique genetics, our microbiome, our age, our sex, our stage of life, and all these other things, then what manifests are all these different categories of symptoms, which are the leaves of the tree. But, I try to keep those pieces together for people to understand, which I'm sure in your practice, you're also educating your clients so that they understand long term, you know, if other symptoms do come up in their life, oh, this is why this might be happening, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, that's why it's so important to look at the whole picture of the client and do a really thorough intake and history. And even though I am, yes, specializing in acne, I want to understand what other symptoms, if any, are present. So it is pretty common for my acne clients to also be struggling with fatigue, brain fog, digestive issues, and understanding that whole picture is so important because that's going to clue me into potential other root causes that might be at play, that maybe even extend beyond the gut. So that's a really, really good point.
Right. So after the testing, I'm sure the first thing you're talking about with your clients is the food, correct? Food and lifestyle probably simultaneously.
Yes. And so that's such a great segue because you were just kind of mentioning those foundations, and educating my clients is such an important piece of my work with them.
Right.
I want my clients to understand why I'm recommending the changes that I'm recommending, because if they understand the why, they're going to be way more successful and probably consistent in implementing those changes. And that is really relevant for the core foundations, which is sort of how I refer to them. And that really does refer to nutrition and lifestyle foundations. So I really take the time to educate my clients on those foundations. And, specifically on the nutrition front, what I would say is I'm way more focused on educating my clients on the nutrients that I want them to focus on getting more of, rather than taking a bunch of things away from them and making them feel like they have to try yet another really stringent elimination diet. A lot of my clients have already tried those things. But, you mentioned some of these nutrients earlier, focusing on fiber. Fiber is a huge one. Fiber is a powerhouse nutrient that most of us are super deficient in. And fiber is going to feed your good gut bacteria. It's going to regulate your blood sugar. It's going to add bulk to your stool,
Sweep out toxins.
sweep out toxins, sweep out excess hormones. We could go on and on about fiber. It's a powerhouse. And most of us are maxing out at 10 to 15 grams a day when we need closer to 35 grams a day. So I'm having a really in depth conversation about fiber with my clients. I'm giving them actionable tips and tricks to really make upping that fiber feel sustainable, right? Because these changes have to feel sustainable, right?
Right.
If we want our clients to maintain these changes long term, they have to feel approachable and sustainable. So, fiber is huge. Nutrient diversity is another really important foundation that I educate my clients on. And I recommend all of my clients aim to consume 30 different plant foods a week for nutrient diversity, because that diversity is also critical for a healthy and diverse gut microbiome. So those are, some of the really important nutrition foundations that we go over, like I said, in a lot of detail. And the reason I take the time to get so detailed about those foundations is ultimately, yes, I can clear a client's skin while we are working together in my container, but I want my clients to feel like they have been empowered by this education so that even when our work together ends, they now know what they need to do to maintain clear skin.
And there has been that positive trend. We're hearing it more and more, yes, even on social media to get those 30 different fruits and vegetables a week. In fact, there's some marketing now, of course, happening there where you can buy a product that here's all your 30 different fruits and vegetables if you have a quarter cup of this every day. And what I try to tell people is you're not going to get all your fiber in that quarter cup just because it has 30 different, fruits and vegetables because they're including the herbs too. And a lot of people probably know what I'm talking about, but we have to be careful with how there's even functional medicine marketing that, is trying to loop us into, but if you do this, you'll get it all. But we have to recognize we need a lot of bulk, we need a lot of fiber, and we can learn how to enjoy those foods in very easy ways, so I'm sure you're always having to give them food tips on making certain smoothies or fast and easy breakfast. Because I know I'm not a chef and I'm always about, "Okay, let's make it, fast and easy, tastes good, practical." You have to look at each person's lifestyle, but it's important.
So true, and you're preaching to the choir. I mean, I always am explaining to my clients that no supplement is going to trump a whole foods-based, fiber-rich, nutrient-diverse diet, getting it in that whole food form. It's not to say that supplements don't have a place, because supplements are part of my protocols as well, and they can really aid in the healing process. They can allow me to get much more targeted in my treatment of somebody's root causes. But supplements are aptly named. Supplements are supplemental in nature. They are not the core. They are not the core foundation of the healing. Everything is built upon those foundations that we just discussed. So I totally agree.
Right. Definitely. And so that does kind of lead me to that next step. Are there like basic supplements that tend to be essential for most of your clients that you think are helpful, that are difficult to meet in the diet?
So, yes, I will say when it comes to supplements though, and I'm sure you agree with me, it really does need to be individualized. I would say like a general supplement that I believe most people would benefit from is like an electrolyte mineral blend of some kind for cellular hydration, and I think just so many of us now, even if we eat a really clean and nutritious diet, it's hard to get all of those minerals in because our soil is so depleted now, and because so many of us are so stressed out, we're burning through electrolytes and minerals so quickly. So, that is one supplement I feel pretty comfortable saying most people can benefit from, and I'm putting most of my clients on an electrolyte mineral blend pretty early on. But beyond that, it really does need to be pretty targeted, and that's again why I think experimenting with supplements, which a lot of my clients do before they find me, it's sort of a slippery slope because what I see is that a lot of these clients end up on these really long supplement protocols, but they have no idea what each supplement is doing, and they can't actually even isolate the impact of any of these supplements. So you really want to be with supplements, I think very strategic and very ultimately conservative too. The body can only process so many supplements at one time.
Right. Put stress on the liver, right? Too much is not good for our liver.
Yep. So with my supplement protocols, I make sure that anything that I'm including is in there because I believe it's going to move the needle for that particular client, and I'm also educating them on why it's in their protocol. I want them to understand the why.
So bringing that all together, what do you think, looking at the overall diet, what would be those broad things that you especially recommend? Like the plant foods, types of fats, any guidance there overall?
Yeah, so I would say, some of the biggest foundations are, as we discussed, fiber, nutrient diversity. The other thing that I would be absolutely remiss in not discussing is blood sugar regulation.
Mhm.
That is so, so important, especially in the context of healing acne. So, not even just focusing on what specific foods, but what food groups you're eating and making sure that you are eating protein, fat, and fiber, ideally at every single meal.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Blood sugar regulation, in many ways, is the key to hormone balance. If we have big spikes in blood sugar, that is going to have a really profound downstream effect on our cortisol, our insulin, our sex hormones. But if we have beautiful, balanced blood sugar at every meal, our hormones are going to be much more balanced and much happier. And the way to balance your blood sugar is to, what I like to say is dress up your carbs. So don't eat carbs by themselves. Pair a carb source with a fat or a protein or a fiber because fat, protein, and fiber are going to help modulate that glucose spike from whatever sugar you're eating.
Right.
And that is an absolute foundation for healing acne. So I really educate my clients on that as well. And the beauty of that is we actually have so much control over our blood sugar based on the foods that we reach for. And really just making some very simple tweaks can dramatically shift your blood sugar in a much better direction.
Right. It's just like when I talk about to my clients about meals, it's like looking at your meal. Are you having your fruit and or vegetable? Are you having your good fats? Are you getting some protein? Are you getting some more complex type of carbohydrates so that you're meeting the different needs? And I did that research recently before our discussion that there's such a strong connection between insulin production and increased acne.
Yes, absolutely. So that's another, I'd say, really important foundation. The other foundation I feel like I should bring up that we haven't discussed yet that's more in the lifestyle bucket is nervous system regulation. Because one of the other, I would say, most common root causes that I see beyond the gut is dysregulated cortisol. And that goes hand in hand with a dysregulated nervous system. And I think that's super common because, as we touched on before, I think in Western society, it really sort of breeds dysregulation, right? Most of us, I think, are in a little bit of a low grade fight or flight a lot of the time, and I think it's subconscious for a lot of us.
Yeah. The new norm.
It's the new norm, and it can really disrupt cortisol, and that can then also have a downstream impact on your other sex hormones, progesterone, estrogen. So, I see a lot of dysregulated cortisol, really high cortisol. I even sometimes see low cortisol states where, typically with low cortisol, someone has basically been in that high cortisol state for so long that they then drop into low cortisol because they're so depleted.
Mm.
So, nervous system regulation is a really important piece that I educate on as well. And what I, you know, would sort of say high level is that the skin is going to do its best deep cellular repair work when we are in a mostly regulated state, when we are in a parasympathetic rest and digest state.
Right.
And so my clients who really identify with being really chronically stressed, and there's quite a few of them, that's something that we really focus on. And so there's kind of two pieces to that. Yes, there are things you can do on the supplement front to help support stress resilience, but it's also really about finding practices that allow you to access a state of calm, a state of safety in your body somatically. So that's anything from meditation to breath work to somatic work.
Going out in nature. It's always my go-to, whether it's going for a hike or even just stepping outside, just listening to birds. It's just it's calming.
Exactly. I mean, it can be that simple. It can literally be that simple. That's also a really important piece, and it is a piece that they also have to take on themselves a little bit, It's not I can't magically regulate someone's nervous system. I, of course, can provide a lot of support and education and potentially some supplement support on that front, but I would be remiss in not discussing that because that is also a really, really common root cause that I'm seeing.
All right. Yeah, it's great. It's that food and lifestyle approach, right? Just getting to that root cause. So, Delaney, this was all great information. It's so important, especially for teens, to know this early on, the things that they can do that are even more important in addressing their skin issues versus searching for literally what's outside of them. So, what I'd like to leave with our listeners today is what are three things that you would encourage both teens and adults to look at in their lives first to support better skin health?
I love that question because there is so much that we can do foundationally first before jumping to a pharmaceutical or a dermatologist or even working with me, which is, more individualized care and functional testing. There's a lot we can do before you even reach that step. And I would say on that front, I mean, number one, nutrition. So focusing on those foundations that we discussed. Are you getting enough fiber? Are you getting enough nutrient diversity? Experimenting with minimizing or reducing gluten and dairy can also be really helpful because those are very real acne triggers. So, making those changes, I think, first is really helpful and seeing what comes of that because you'd be surprised how much can shift just by changing those pieces.
Mhm.
The second thing I would say is, on the skincare front, making sure that whatever you're using on the skincare front is not keeping your barrier in a compromised state. I feel like I have to say this because I see so many compromised barriers in my practice, and it's the result of trying so many different topicals over time. So I would say on the skincare front, try to simplify, pare things down, and try to focus on the basics and products that are going to support your skin barrier, as opposed to just drying out the acne and nuking the acne, which is a lot of the really sort of mainstream conventional advice that I think a lot of people follow, which I think does more harm than good. And then the third piece would be nervous system regulation, honestly.
Yeah.
I think nervous system regulation it's so foundational. It affects every single organ system in the body, and it's really hard for the skin to heal if you're chronically stressed out. It's hard for even a supplement protocol to be as effective as it could be if you are chronically dysregulated. So finding ways to get more regulated, whether that's going out in nature, taking a walk, experimenting with meditation, whatever that may be. And I would say once you have sort of checked those boxes with those core foundations and you've given it some time, if your acne is still persisting, it may be time to work with someone like me who can take a deeper look, who can run functional testing and really put together what your unique root cause picture looks like so that you can finally get real answers and real sustainable healing that actually sticks long term because we're no longer just suppressing the symptom or band-aiding the symptom. And that's the thing I would say, root cause work is very rewarding as well. It's a really rewarding process. You watch your skin heal and transform, and you often watch other symptoms improve alongside the acne because we're addressing these internal imbalances in the body that are not just manifesting in acne, they're usually manifesting in other symptoms as well.
Right. So overall, just looking at your food, simplifying your skin routine, and calming that nervous system are great 3 takeaways. So I want our listeners to know where they can find you if they're looking for your services. Where can we find you online?
Yes. So my Instagram and my TikTok are the Clear Skin Nutritionist. So you can find me there on social. And then my website is theclearskinnutritionist.com. And that's where you can apply to work with me. The first step before I officially take on a new client is a free discovery call. I always want to make sure that it's a good mutual fit. And so that's honestly where people would find me.
Great. Well, it was great to have you. Thank you for taking this time and have a beautiful weekend. Thank you, Delaney.
Thank you so much, Norma.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
What I loved most about my conversation with Delaney today was that it's the simplest things that can make the biggest difference, and that includes for skin health. And considering the impact or the influence that social media has on the choices that we make and that push for all of these different skincare routines that a lot of teens are looking at, I think this message is so important to share. So if you are only listening today, please head on over to my YouTube channel. And there you can subscribe or share to get this information out there because this is a topic that is important for youth to hear and adults as well. With that said, thank you for joining me today. Until next time, be well.